Of the Jews, he confesses his knowledge. They hadn't told him anything. The first thing that Pilate asked, he zeroes in on, are you the king? Do you think you're a king? And later in the story, it's going to seem like Pilate tries to wash his hands of the whole thing and says, I don't find anything wrong with this guy. It's all your fault, but it's not. He confesses his knowledge in the story. And then he says, do you think I'm a Jew? He confesses his prejudice. Because in verse 34, Jesus had said to his question, are you the king of the Jews? Is that your idea, or did somebody else tell you about me? And he was really asking, are you thinking Roman king or Jewish king? If this is your idea, that maybe you want to have faith in me? And Pilate says, do you think I'm a Jew? And history tells us that the Roman governors generally hated the Jewish people that they served. Quickly, number 3. The third question. What is it that you've done? He confesses his weakness. Even though he's the Roman governor, he seems to be a very weak man. John doesn't tell us about Pilate's wife coming to him and telling him, I had this dream. Don't have anything to do with this just man. And he should have listened to his wife, but he didn't. He didn't know what was going on. Here's a man caught up in the greatest event in human history. He has no clue to what's happening. It just shows us that he has no clue personally in the last question that he asked. It's the most striking question. What is truth? Now, it's in response to something Jesus said to him. Jesus seems to be trying to witness to Pilate in this circumstance to lead him to faith. In verse 37, notice there in verse 37, if you have your Bibles there. There in verse 30, to this end, thou sayest that I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I shall bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice. Jesus said, you're right in saying that I'm a king. For this reason I was born, for this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth. And he said, everyone who's on the side of truth listens to me. In that 38th verse, are you on the side of truth, Pilate? And Pilate confesses his cynicism. That's what shows us about himself. What is truth? He's a very cynical man with a cynical heart. What is truth? He was standing face to face with the truth, with the way, the truth, and the life. And he couldn't see it. He couldn't recognize it. You can become so cynical that you can come face to face with truth. It can be as bright as the brightest day, and you don't see it because of your cynicism. Now, if Pilate had just listened, he could have heard what he needed to hear. He had all these ideas about the king and who was the king. As he talked to Jesus, Jesus said, I'm the king. I have a kingdom that's not of this world. He said, I'm a king who came to tell the truth. I'm a king who was rejected by his own people. But see, Pilate needed a king in his life. He was trying to follow Caesar, some human who proclaimed to be king, and he had grown cynical because of it. He needed a true king in his life. When Jesus said to Pilate, I'm a king, that was a crucial moment in Pilate's life. A crucial moment of deciding, is he going to be my king, or am I going to live with my cynicism the rest of my life? There may be a few of you who've been living with a cynical heart for a long time. It's a terrible place to live. I hope you hear the compassion of Jesus, that he cares. He wants to show you the truth that can literally change your life, that you don't have to live that kind of way. Now, there's a verdict to all of this. Pilate talks with Jesus. Pilate, the representative of the Roman Empire, the representative of the Roman king, about who he is and what power really is. And Jesus reveals in everything. He says the verdict is, Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's the Lord of Lords. He's innocent. He's the King of Kings. Now remember, in the beginning, I told you, remember about contrast at the beginning. See what happened. Jesus comes before the supposedly great power of the day, the Roman army. The Roman army tries to arrest him. Now who's the one who ends up looking powerful? The Roman army ends up looking foolish, and Jesus is shown to be the one of great power. See what John 18 is all about? Then Jesus is brought before the most righteous court of the day, the Jewish court, the one that kept God's law, and brought before this court. It's very clear that the most righteous court of the day are the ones who are guilty. And Jesus is the one who's pure and innocent. He's drawing a contrast. And then he brings Jesus before Pilate, the representative of the greatest king of the day, the Lord Caesar. And as Pilate and Jesus face off face to face, who really looks like the king? Where's the real power? Not with Caesar, not with Pilate. And as you see them facing one another, Jesus is shown to be the King of Kings, and Pilate is shown to be some puppet runner serving some human master. Contrast. It shows us of the greatest power of the day who Jesus really is. And see, that's what John's been doing in this whole book. He doesn't want us to miss who Jesus is. There's a verdict in our lives too about this that comes when it comes to Jesus being King of Kings. When you describe your relationship to Jesus, how would you describe it lately? I would use two words. One is a word a Pilate would use, someone who's putting Jesus on trial. The other is a word that a disciple would use, somebody who's following Jesus as King. And we have to face this every day of our lives. Is my relationship with him one of questioning him? God, why are you doing this? Why is this happening? Why can't I do it my way? Is it one of questioning, or is it one of trusting? Where we say, God, I don't understand what's happening, but you have a plan that's bigger than me. I know how much this hurts. You know how much it hurts, and thank you that you have a lot bigger plan than I could ever see. And I don't know why you don't want me to do this, but it seems like it would make me so happy if I could do this. But I know you're telling me not to. So I'm going to trust you more than I'm going to trust my own feelings. And that's tough. But that's what it means for Jesus to be the King. Is he King in your life? Is that what he is? You know, with the King, you look to them as the one you're going to follow. In Jesus' case, we can trust him as the King because he's also our counselor. He gives us the best advice for living our lives every day. Let's bow our heads together in prayer.